Hello everyone and welcome back to our CACMA final Indirect Taxes batch Safal. How are you all? I hope everything going great and amazing. So ma'am, last class we had started with our Safal batch where we just understood the very basic meaning of tax. We are going to study a law which is a taxation law, GST, as well as customs. So it is important for us to understand why do we pay taxes? What are the types of taxes? Which particular type of tax we are going to study? Only this basic understanding we had taken. Just a 2-minute summary for whatever we completed yesterday. Ma'am, we started with what is tax. Chalo. You all have to give replies in the comment section. Tell me what is tax. Ma'am, a compulsory pecuniary monetary payment which we have to give to government is tax. And why do we pay tax? Because ma'am, government needs money to run the country, to run the administration. Ma'am, taxes are enforced. It is not that you cannot say that, oh, today I'm not in mood to pay taxes. This is a voluntary contribution or a donation. No, it is an enforced contribution, compulsory, which you have to give to government. Now ma'am, taxes of two types we saw: direct tax and indirect tax. We are particularly going to deal with the indirect taxes part. However, we'll understand the meaning of both. So ma'am, direct tax is a kind of tax where the person paying the tax is the same person who is bearing burden of the tax. These are progressive in nature. So as your capacity to pay increases, the taxes will also increase. However, indirect tax, the person paying the tax shifts the burden on the final consumer, and these are regressive in nature, meaning whether you have very much capacity to pay or you don't have capacity to pay, you will still be required to pay these indirect taxes. Why? Because they are not applicable on the person dealing with goods services. These taxes are applicable on the goods and services only. Direct taxes are applicable on person as such, but the indirect taxes are applicable on goods or services. Example of direct tax can be income tax, indirect tax can be GST. Right, ma'am. We particularly started with GST. Ma'am, GST came into effect in India in 2017. So did we not have any other indirect taxation regime before 2017? Ma'am, we had. On manufacturing, we had excise duty. On intrastate sale of goods, there was VAT. On interstate sale of goods, there was CST. On supply of services, there was service tax. Plus, we had a lot of other taxes like octroi, municipal taxes, local taxes, etc. So, ma'am, to summarize, to subsume all these taxes into one tax, to reduce the compliance burden on the businessman, for the ease of doing business, to make everything digitalized on just one website, government subsumed all the taxes into one nation, one tax, which is today known as GST, Goods and Services Tax. Right, ma'am. There were a lot of problems in the earlier taxation regime. There was tax on tax, basically cascading. Then there were no credits were available properly. There was sometimes like restaurant services, or there is no distinction whether it is goods or service, because we are served with food, which is goods, but also the cooking and serving service, which is the service. So on a single supply, restaurant owners used to charge VAT also, considering it as goods, plus service tax also, considering it as services. So because of this, the ultimate consumer suffers because he has to pay two taxes on a single transaction only. With GST, all these things are now removed. So, ma'am, we say that the concept of GST is based on four foundations. First is GST is a value added tax. What do we mean by the term value added tax? The value on which government has already charged GST with respect to any goods or services, they will not charge GST on the same again. Only at the next stage, whatever new value is added to the product, on that value only GST is going to be charged. We saw an example yesterday. However, we took it in a little fast manner. Today, we'll slowly understand the entire chain of credit. What exactly do we mean by the term value added tax? Right, ma'am. So let's say we have Mr. A here. We have Mr. B, Miss C. Okay, ma'am. Mr. A is a manufacturer. He manufactures a product and sells it to Mr. B. So this person is manufacturing a product and selling it to Mr. B. The product is for 100 rupees. 100 is the pure taxable value. However, ma'am, let's assume, see, practically today the rates of GST prevalent are 5%, 18%, 40%. There is no 10 percentage rate in GST. For simplicity, we are taking 10% here. Right, ma'am. So let's assume on these goods, 10% rate is applicable. So 100 into 10 percentage, I will say the GST amount is 10. So the total is going to be 110. So what Mr. B is going to pay to Mr. A? Out of pocket, ma'am, Mr. B will pay 110 rupees to Mr. A. Now, out of this 110, what is the GST amount? 10. So Mr. A is going to pay this 10 rupees to government and keep rupees 100 with him in his pocket. Which means, ma'am, the person paying the tax to government is Mr. A. But the person bearing the burden of this tax is Mr. B. Because tax is going out of pocket of Mr. B. But it reaches to government through Mr. A. Right, ma'am. So now B has purchased some goods for 110 rupees. Now, ma'am, if B is selling these goods further, keeping the spirit of GST in mind, he should not actually bear the burden of 10 because he is not the final consumer. He is an intermediary person who is going to ultimately transfer the goods to someone else. As of now, B has borne the burden of 10 rupees. Let's see if he supplies further, what happens. Now let's assume that B is selling these goods to C for rupees 150. Right. This is the base value, the taxable value. As per 10% GST rate, we will say 15 is the GST amount. So 165 is the total amount that Miss C is going to pay to Mr. B. So out of pocket, C is paying rupees 165 to B. Now if you see, B should keep 150 in pocket, right? B should keep 150 in pocket because that is the taxable value. 15 rupees have been collected in the name of GST, which should be paid to government. Tell me, is Mr. B going to pay entire 15 rupees to government? Yes or no? Is Mr. B going to pay entire 15 rupees to government? Yes or no? Simple question I'm asking. Ma'am, see, the final value at which the goods are sold by B to C is 150. But out of 150, on the same goods, on 100, GST have been already paid to government. We are not going to pay GST on that same 100 again. At this stage, what is the value added? Ma'am, at this stage, the value added is 50. So new GST should only be charged on this 50 only because on the first 100 GST is already paid. Ma'am, how did you arrive at 50? 150 minus 100 is equal to 50. So ma'am, 50 into 10 percentage should be 5. So at this stage, new 5 GST should be paid to government. This is one way of calculating. Another way of calculating, see, B has collected 15 in the name of GST from C. Now B will say that out of my pocket, I paid 10 to Mr. A, no? Out of my pocket, I have already paid this 10 rupees GST to Mr. A and Mr. A has also given this GST amount to government. Why should I bear that 10? Why should I bear that 10? Because I am not the final consumer. C is the final consumer. So entire 15 should be borne by C only and not me. So what B will tell to government? Listen, government. I collected 15 from C in the name of GST. But I have already given 10 to Mr. A. Why are you taking this 10 again from me? I give you 15, you give me my 10 back. What B will say to government? I give you 15, you give me my 10 back. So rather than doing these two transactions, B giving 15 to government and government giving 10 back to C, what government will say? Okay, no problem. What you do is you take credit of 10, the 10 that you already paid to Mr. A and only new 5 of GST. only new in cash 5 rupees GST you pay to us. So Mr. B will get a credit of 10. Mr. B will get a credit of 10 here, and 15 minus 10, only 5. He will have to new pay to government. This is one way of calculating which will exactly match with the other way which says only at every stage the value that is being added is going to be additionally charged. This is also 5. This is also 5. Who is the final consumer here? Miss C. So out of whose pocket the entire GST is now going, ma'am? C. For C now 165 is the cost of these goods, out of which 15 is GST, entirely borne by C. Whatever these intermediate person bear in the name of GST, they all get the credit again, and full burden is shifted to the final consumer. This is known as the chain of credit. So we say at every stage, whatever the new value is being added, that is being taxed, not the value which is already taxed. It will not be taxed again. How is this possible? Because, ma'am, everyone keeps getting continuous credits. Ma'am, if everyone will get credit, ultimately someone has to bear the burden of the tax. So, who is going to be that ultimate person bearing the entire burden of tax? So, we say everyone gets the continuous chain of credit, but eventually the entire burden is borne by the final consumer. Right, ma'am. And there is no tax on tax. There is no cascading. We never charged GST on this 10 again. It is always the base value from where we see the value addition. We never charge GST on GST. In the earlier taxation regimes, we used to charge VAT on excise duty, but now it is not happening. There is no cascading of taxes. Only the pure taxable value is going to be charged. Whatever taxes you pay, you get credit. You pay, you get credit, and shift everything to the final consumer. You never charge GST on GST. These are the 4 concepts based on which GST is entirely made. Are we all clear with this? Say yes, ma'am. Yesterday, I just mentioned the points of the concepts. We did not discuss them into much detail. Today, you have understood the entire chain of credit. Everyone, tell me yes, ma'am, in the comment section. You guys will have to reply. Come on. I don't like students being lazy and not replying. You have to be active. I told you already. If not anything, at least one good thing should happen with you, which is your typing speed has to increase with the shuffle batch. Right, ma'am. Bolo. Chalo, Chaitanya. Nandini. Vamsi. Got it, ma'am. So these are the concepts. Okay. We also understood about dual GST in India. Ma'am, what do we mean by the term dual GST? Because India is a federal country, we do understand that the central government also needs funds and the state government also needs funds. So whatever GST you are paying, 50% of it goes to the central government, 50% of it goes to the state government. But the question is, which state, ma'am? The state where the destination of goods is. The state where the consumption of goods or services is happening. So GST is not an origin based tax. GST is a destination based tax, right, ma'am? So it is not the place of origin, the place of manufacture. That state is not going to get the revenue of GST. The state where these goods or services are consumed, ultimately, that state will get the revenue of the GST being collected. 50% goes to center, the remaining 50% to the state of consumption, right, ma'am? First, in 2000, the Prime Minister of India thought of bringing GST in India and then completing all the procedures, getting all the approvals, making the law, passing it in the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, getting President's assent, everything took 17 whole years, and eventually 1st July 2017, GST was made applicable to whole of India other than Jammu Kashmir, because Jammu Kashmir passed its SGST Act on 8th July 2017. However, this is now no more relevant because today GST is applicable to whole of India, including Jammu Kashmir, no exceptions anywhere. Which was the first country to implement GST? Tell me. Chalo. Did you teach us this? Yes, yesterday. Quickly tell me, which was the first country in the entire world to bring such a concept of one nation, one tax and start with GST? Presently, more than 160 countries have already adopted GST, including India. But which was the first one? Might be an MCQ. So, ma'am, the first country to implement GST in entire world was France. Taking inspiration from France, currently more than 160 countries have already adopted GST. Right, ma'am. Chalo. Pradeepan, Vamsi, Chaitanya, Nandini, I want you all to reply in the comment section. Right. Okay. Now, ma'am, in India, we have states, we have union territories. Right, ma'am. Now, as I said, GST has a dual model, which means 50% goes to central government and 50% goes to state government. If union territory, we say UTGST is charged. So, ma'am, CGST is central GST plus SGST, state GST, UTGST, union territory GST. This is charged whenever we are making an intra-state supply. So we exactly know, ma'am, if the goods are going from Gujarat to Gujarat, I will be charging CGST plus Gujarat State SGST. However, if I'm making an interstate supply, first what government will do is they will charge IGST, which is Integrated Goods and Services Tax. So for all the interstate transactions, once IGST, integrated goods and services tax is being charged. And then later on, government will see what was the place of supply, what was the point of consumption destination. So this entire IGST is collected by central government first, and then they will give the 50% to the state, whichever is the state of consumption destination, the place of supply. So, ma'am, if the transaction is intrastate, there is no doubt, there is no problem, only we are very clear that okay, this 50% has to go to this state only because it is intrastate. But for interstate supplies, once government charges IGST, and then they are going to apportion the 50% to the relevant state who should get the share. Right, ma'am. So if the question is interstate, we have no problem because we know IGST we are going to charge. But for questions where they are saying there are intrastate transactions, let us say they say that the goods are supplied from Delhi to Delhi. They say the goods are supplied from Jammu Kashmir to Jammu Kashmir, or they are saying the goods are supplied from Ladakh to Ladakh. So I know it is intrastate, but the only one thing that you have to keep in mind is if it is a state, we are going to apply C plus SGST. But if it is a union territory, we have to apply C plus UTGST. For that, we need to know which are the states in India and which are the union territories in India. As I said, you will be getting a lot of other knowledge free with GST. So starting with general knowledge, tell me how many states are there in India presently? If I give you map of India, how many states are there geographically today in India? 27, 28, 29, 30. Tell me. How many states are there in India presently today? As per our geography. 28. Okay. 28. Very good. So, ma'am, presently today, as per our geography, we say there are 28 states in India. But as per GST, there are 31. How is this possible, ma'am? There are 3 union territories which have their own legislature. See, normally union territories are run by the central government only. They don't have a chief minister at state level and all. But there are 3 union territories in India which have their own chief minister, which have their own union territories. And these 3 UTs are Delhi, Jammu Kashmir, and Puducherry. So, ma'am, as such, they are union territories, but they do have their own legislature, their own chief minister. For GST purposes, Delhi, Jammu Kashmir, and Puducherry are going to be considered as state only. So, if the question says that we are making supply from Delhi to Delhi, we understand it is an intra-state transaction, even though Delhi is a union territory. But still, for GST purposes, I am not going to charge C plus UTGST. I am going to charge C plus SGST here because GST considers Delhi, Jammu Kashmir, and Puducherry as state only in India. Right, ma'am. Chalo, very good. You all know that there are 28 states. So now tell me, how many total union territories are there in India? 28 states plus how many total union territories are there in India? Ma'am, there are a total of 8 union territories in India. Out of 8, 3 are taken here with the states only. So we are now left with 5 union territories, which for GST purpose will be considered as union territory. And here I am going to charge C plus UT GST. Here I am going to charge C plus SGST. Which are these 5 union territories, ma'am? Andaman Nicobar, Ladakh, Lakshadweep, Chandigarh, Dadra Nagar Haveli, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu is a single union territory. They are not separate. Earlier they were, but then Jammu Kashmir was included in union territories, and then they merged Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu into a single union territory. So presently we have a total of 8 union territories in India, out of which 3 have legislature and 5 do not. So the 3 which are having their own legislature, which is Delhi, Jammu Kashmir and Puducherry, will be considered as states only for GST purposes. However, the remaining union territories, which we can call as all CD, with love, a small mnemonic, all CD. Ma'am, only these all CD names you remember. Rest everything is state only. Right. Only all CD, if I remember, Andaman Nicobar, Ladakh, Lakshadweep, Chandigarh, Dadar Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu. These 5 union territories are considered as union territories in GST. Rest everything automatically becomes state only. Say yes, you have understood this. GST is a dual model. See, if there is interstate transaction, there is no problem only because we will charge IGST and then government will allocate it to the respective state or union territory. However, if it is an intra-state transaction, you have to understand whether to charge C plus SGST in the question or to charge C plus UTGST in the question. So you just remember all CD. You just remember all CD, that if they are giving an intra-state transaction for all CD, you will be charging C plus UT GST. Other than these, any place given, I am going to charge C plus SGST only. Right, ma'am. So the 28 geographical states plus, ma'am, Delhi, Jammu, Kashmir and Puducherry will be considered as states in India. But Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, Ladakh, Chandigarh, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu will be considered as union territories. Ma'am, what is this other? This we will see in the chapter of charge of GST. Other we will see in charge of GST, the exclusive economic zone and all. So, ma'am, this is the land territory of India. Ma'am, what about water? In water also we have exclusive economic zones and all, which are considered as separate union territories. This we will understand in the chapter of charge of GST. For now, you can ignore this particular point. Done. Now, the GST law categorizes 11 states as special category states under GST law. Now, see, the special states might differ. So, when we will go to the composition levy chapter, there are different special category states. Registration chapter, there are different special category states. But for entire law, they have once given 11 special category states. It is possible that section wise or topic wise, sometimes they can consider different states as special category other than these, right, ma'am? However, these are the general special category states. If they are not mentioning anything about exceptions and they only mention the term special category state, they are only mentioning the term special category state without giving reference to any section topic in particular, then, ma'am, these are the 11 special category states which we have to understand. These are written in the GST law. Government has actually recognized them as special category states for the purpose of GST. Now, there is nothing to explain, right? I cannot like show you the map and on the map, see, this is Nagaland, see, this is Assam, see, this is special category. That, of course, we cannot do. There is no understanding part involved here as such. There is only learning part, that, okay, you have to learn the names of 11 special category states. And it becomes very easy for you to learn because we have made a mnemonic for the same. So we say no asthma, No asthma in Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir are our 11 special category states. So, ma'am, it is a special because no one gets asthma there. These states are special. No one gets asthma there. What is this, ma'am? No for Nagaland. No for Nagaland. A for Assam. S for Sikkim. T for Tripura. H for Himachal Pradesh. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. Whenever I say M, you are going to say Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. A for, don't say Andhra Pradesh. Huh? I'll thrash you if you say Andhra Pradesh. A is Arunachal Pradesh. I don't know why students make this mistake. A is Arunachal Pradesh. Uttarakhand, Jammu, Kashmir. These are the 11 special category states under GST. In GST law, government has specifically recognized them as special category states. At a lot of places, different provisions are being made for these particular states. What are the special category states? Tell me in the comment section. Write the mnemonic ones. Ma'am, it is no asthma. No asthma in Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir. No asthma in Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir. No for Nagaland. No for Nagaland. A for Assam. S for Sikkim. T for Tripura. H for Himachal Pradesh. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. Arunachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Jammu Kashmir. These are the 11 special category states under GST. Yesterday, I told you to bring rough sheets in the class daily. Right? Yes, ma'am. I believe you have brought rough sheets today. If yes, with me, one time you are going to scribble the 11 special category states in your rough sheet. Oh, I can anytime randomly name any person to click the picture of the scribble and send it to me. If you are unable to send, I will remove you from the class right away. So it is very important for you to scribble along with me. Right, ma'am? Chalo. So write in the rough sheet with me. I am also scribbling with you, no? It is you who is going to appear for the exam and not me. So if I am taking these efforts, see, I can simply tell the names and skip that part because there is nothing to make you understand about it. I am taking that extra step to make you learn everything in the syllabus. So you also cannot be lazy about this thing. So open your rough sheet, take pen, pencil, whatever you have. 11 special category states under GST. They are no asthma in Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir. Yes, ma'am. So no for Nagaland, Assam, Sikkim, Tripura, Himachal Pradesh. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. M for Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya. Arunachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Jammu Kashmir. These are the 11 special category states under GST. Done? Shall we proceed? Say yes, ma'am. Bolo. Lalita, have you understood? Yes, ma'am, understood. Perfect. Sure. Now, ma'am, a very simple general knowledge question again. Let us say I am starting a new business of calculators. I decided to start trading in calculators from today. I am a new person. I'm not aware about any GST compliance as of now. One thing I want to know is that if I sell this calculator to customers, what should be the rate of GST which I am going to charge in the bill? What is the question? If I sell this calculator, what is the rate of GST that I should charge to my customers? Tell me, how will you find this out? Ma'am, we will Google it. Okay, but Google will also show you results based on what? Ma'am, there are hundreds and thousands and lakhs of goods and services prevailing in India. How to decide that out of the different rates specified by government, which particular rate is going to be applicable on my calculator? which particular rate is going to be applicable on my mobile phone, on my charger, water bottle, or even like you purchased the Shuffle batch, there was 18% GST charged on it. How did I decide that I should charge 18%? I could have charged 5 also. Is there a way to find out? Tell me. What is going to be the rate of GST applicable on calculator? Okay, if you know the answer, then you tell me from where did you find this out? That this should be the rate. Ma'am, in GST, we have a classification which is known as Harmonized System of Nomenclature. HSN code. You would have heard about HSN code. For services, we call it as SAC. So HSN is for goods and services is for SAC. SAC is for services, scheme of classification of services. Right, ma'am. So how do we find out what is going to be the rate of GST applicable is based on what is my HSN code or SAC code for the particular goods or service. For every single code, government has given a rate of GST. So I can simply search what is the HSN code of calculator, and for that particular HSN code, whatever rate government has notified, that is going to be applicable. See, the HSN code can go up to 8 digits maximum in detail. How it works? Let us say, what are we studying currently? Ma'am, we are doing CA. I can name it as 01 code, let's say. Ma'am, in CA, we are in CA final. So 01 for foundation, 02 for intermediate, let's say 03 for final. Ma'am, in final also, we are doing group 2 subjects. So let's say group 2. Ma'am, in that also, we are doing the GST part first and we'll do the customs part later on. So GST part. So this is how in detail the HSN code works. So basically they will be first having a chapter name. So ma'am, CA final is the chapter. Now in this, I have heading, then I have subheading, I have subheading, and that is how I reach the ultimate final product in which I'm dealing. So ma'am, it is possible I'm randomly taking any numbers, okay? This is not like real HSN code. Random numbers I'm taking. Ma'am, it is possible that 7056 is for calculators. Now, ma'am, in this, they would have different codes for financial calculator, scientific calculator, normal calculator, or maybe on the basis of some material, calculators made out of plastic, calculators made out of metal, etc., etc. So, ma'am, I will specifically go to my HSN code, which might be 70560830. And then for this code, whatever rate of GST government has notified, that is going to be applicable on me. Are we understanding this, everyone? Say yes, ma'am. You can search HSN code for any particular goods or services. On the GST website also, you get the HSN code finder, or you can normally Google also. It shows you the HSN code of your goods services plus the rate of GST applicable on the same. This is the same HSN code which we use in customs also. So in customs also, what rate of custom duty is going to be applicable is dependent on this HSN code only, right? This is the very common HSN code adopted by major countries for classification of goods and services, right? So based on HSN code or SAC code for goods and services respectively, I will see where my particular supply is falling, and accordingly I can decide what is going to be the rate of GST applicable. See, I'll show you. So let us say that I'm searching here HSN code for calculator and GST rate. So we see here, see, the calculators generally fall under the HSN code of 8470, and the rate of GST applicable is 18%. And then we will specifically go that whether they are based on the functions, pocket size calculators, or other calculators. So 8470, and then we will have sub classification in that these are solar or battery operated, these are other calculating machines like the scientific calculators. Accordingly, the HSN code is different, and you can see the specific GST rate being applicable to the same. Done. Chalo. This is one part of the chapter, which is just introduction. What GST, when GST, why GST, what were the problems earlier, And now in GST, what are the states, union territories, special category states, how the classification is done, etc. Now, ma'am, this is like you can break the chapter in 3-4 parts. So one part is done. Now the second part, which says, okay, ma'am, as you said earlier, there were other taxes, other taxation regimes which were prevalent for indirect taxes. And then you said that we subsumed all those taxes and brought one nation, one tax GST. So, which were the taxes that were subsumed in GST? So, ma'am, basically all the indirect taxes that you know. So, for central taxes, we talk about excise, service tax. What is CVD? It is countervailing duty. What is CVD? Countervailing duty. Then we have special countervailing duties, CST, central sales tax, any other surcharge or cess which was applicable on goods services earlier. State also we had lottery, betting, gambling, purchase taxes, luxury taxes, advertisement taxes, entertainment taxes, all the taxes basically, whatever indirect taxes you can name, all those were subsumed in one tax which is GST. So this is not important, but this part is important which says taxes which are not subsumed in GST. Now in your CA final module, it is written that we are not going to ask you direct questions from this introduction part. However, in the remaining syllabus, the remaining chapters that we're going to study, they are going to assume that you already know GST is not applicable on this thing, not applicable on this thing. So they are not going to ask you direct question. But in any other chapter, let's say exemption, charge of GST, computation, they might ask you a question assuming that you already know that these things are not subsumed in GST. And therefore, it is important for us to build the foundation first, understand the introduction topic, and then only move on to the core areas of GST. So, what is subsumed, ma'am? Very simple. Everything is subsumed only. So, that is not holding any significance as such. But what is not subsumed is important for practical understanding, also for further chapters, also. So, ma'am, first goods which is not subsumed in GST is alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Now, there are 2-3 things here which we have to understand. First, ma'am, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, and plus we are saying the undenatured or extra neutral spirits, etc., which are used for manufacturing of alcohol. So basically, alcohol is not subsumed in GST, and plus the spirits that are used to manufacture the alcohol, they are also not subsumed in GST. Question number 1, they are very specifically saying here alcohol for human consumption. So can you name 1 or 2 products in which alcohol is used for industrial purposes also? Can you name me some goods in which you know that, ma'am, there is alcohol? You cannot consume it. It is not for human consumption. But, ma'am, these things also contain alcohol. Any 1 or 2 goods which you can name also contains alcohol, but, ma'am, not meant for human consumption. Very good. Ma'am, sanitizers, makeup products, face toners, all these things also contain alcohol. Now, this is industrial usage alcohol. So, their GST is being charged. But the liquor that we use for human consumption, specifically that liquor, plus the raw material, the spirit used to manufacture this liquor for human consumption, on these GST is not applicable. But are we not shocked? Ma'am, why? Today, when on every goods or services we are charging GST, on ma'am, alcohol is one of the major sources of revenue of government. How can government not charge GST on this? The answer lies in the question only. Because alcohol was and is the major source of revenue for government, they have not subsumed it in GST. Why? First, ma'am, whatever alcohol is manufactured, the excise applicable on that is a state excise. And therefore, we can see alcohol is the same bottle of alcohol would be trading at different prices in different states. Why, ma'am? Because it is the state government which gets the right to charge state excise on these alcoholic products. So, ma'am, and they charge very high excise and VAT because alcohol is a demerit good. It is a sin good. So even if government charges high GST, nobody can oppose it. No, because it is not a good thing. So you cannot say that this is a necessary item, even though it is necessary for some of you. But still you cannot say no that it is a necessary item, so please charge less GST. No, government can charge high GST because it is a demerit good. They can say we are discouraging people to consume alcohol by levying high taxes. Right, ma'am. Now the problem is, ma'am, there are actually two. Problem number one, GST is a dual model, right? So if GST becomes applicable on alcohol, 50% revenue will go to central government, 50% revenue will go to state government. And ma'am, of course, state governments would not be happy with that because alcohol is a very major source of revenue for any state government. So the state governments would, at the initial stage only, oppose GST, saying that AC, why center will take 50% revenue on alcohol, because till date we have been getting the full 100% revenue on alcohol. So states would not agree and would not let central government bring GST into force. Second problem, these excise and VAT that are being currently levied on alcohol are very high. But in GST, we have a maximum rate. We will see this in the chapter of charge of GST. That maximum rate specified in the law is 40%. More than 40% GST government cannot apply only as per current law on any goods or services. So ma'am, if they bring GST on alcohol, maximum what they can charge is 40%, out of which 20 will go to center. So ma'am, why will states agree to lose their revenue and just get a share of 20% of tax on alcohol? So ma'am, no state would agree. They will not vote only for GST, and therefore government would never have been able to bring GST in India. Therefore government said that okay, we will subsume all other goods, services, all other taxes, but let alcohol continue as it was. So in the charging section of GST, which we will see in charge of GST chapter, in the law itself, government has written that GST will be applicable on all goods or services except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So as per the law today, as per the charging section, even if government wants to levy GST on alcohol, they cannot till they amend the law only. As per current law, as per charging section, it is not possible to bring GST on alcohol. So this assurance was given to all the states that you are not losing the revenue. Don't worry, you will not have to share the revenue. The alcohol taxation will continue as it used to be. And therefore everyone agreed to bring GST. This is the reason, this is the story behind alcohol being excluded from the GST regime. So we are saying alcoholic liquor for human consumption and only alcohol, right? Only alcohol. I mean only alcohol for human consumption. If it is industrial alcohol, like we mentioned, ma'am, sanitizers or toners, makeup products, etc. Here on everything, GST is applicable. Specifically the liquor which is meant for human consumption. Specifically the liquor which is meant for human consumption. On this only, GST is not applicable. So for manufacturing, state excise, then if there is intra-state sale of this alcohol, value added tax VAT, which as per the earlier taxation regime will be charged. And if there is interstate supply, central sales tax, CST, is going to be charged. Right, ma'am. Then we say, you go and take a nap. Wait for 10 minutes, Lalitha, that will be cleared. So we are saying, you go and take a nap. Ma'am, what is this? You go and take a nap. So we are saying, which is high-speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation turbine fuel, and petroleum crude. On these 5 products, GST is not applicable today. It will be applicable from a future date. We are waiting for GST Council to recommend this and government to notify this so that we can start levying GST on these 5 products also. Presently, GST is not applicable. So we are saying that, okay, till we notify you for GST taxability, you go and sleep. We'll wake you up that, hello, wake up, from today GST applicable. Till then, you go and take a nap. So we are waiting for GST Council to decide a date from which date GST will be applicable on these 5 products. Till then, manufacturing, central excise is applicable. If intrastate sale, VAT, and if interstate sale, CST is going to be applicable. Okay. What is the difference between point number 1 and point number 2? Other than here there is state excise and here there is central excise. Other than this, what is the other difference that you see? I am saying alcohol is also outside the purview of GST. As of now, the petroleum products, which is high-speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation turbine fuel, petroleum crude, these are also outside the purview of GST. What is the difference between the two? Can you spot some difference here? Other than that, here we have state excise and here we have central excise. What's the other difference? Tell me. Bolo na. What is the other difference? Ma'am, alcohol is permanently outside the scope of GST. In the law, in the charging section, it is written that we will not charge GST. In the law, in the charging section, it is written that we are not going to charge GST on alcohol. So we are not even waiting for government to notify GST on this, because we know GST is not going to be charged till the law is amended. Right, ma'am? So this is permanently outside the scope of GST. However, here this is temporarily outside the scope of GST. It is not written in the charging section that GST will not be levied on the petroleum products. They are saying GST will be levied on everything other than alcoholic liquor. So for this, it is temporarily outside the scope of GST. We do have a hope that one day GST Council will recommend and government will notify to start applying GST on these products also. Till then, we are charging central excise and VAT CST depending upon intra or interstate. Are we understanding? Alcoholic liquor is permanently outside the scope of GST. We were not levying GST, we are not levying GST, and we are not going to also levy GST because it is written in the bare act only. These we were and we are not levying, but we will levy. We know that. We are just waiting for the right time for the council to notify. Till then, we are telling these products to go and take a nap. Right. Now, if you see here, entertainment tax. We are saying that entertainment tax is subsumed in GST. All the types of entertainment taxes being levied by government are subsumed in GST other than the entertainment tax which is levied by local bodies. So we are saying if there is any entertainment tax which is levied by a local body as a municipality. The panchayat, the municipality is the local body. So we are saying that if there is any entertainment tax being levied by local bodies, the power to levy that entertainment tax is still there with the local body. So all types of local taxes, octroys, municipal taxes, entertainment taxes, purchase taxes have been already subsumed in GST. But one thing, which is any entertainment tax being levied by local body, the local body still has power to levy that entertainment tax. Right, ma'am. Now, the very hot topic currently going on, which is about tobacco. Right, ma'am. What is the GST applicability on tobacco? Now we say only there are two things on which GST is not applicable. These today, currently. One is alcohol and second is the petroleum products. On remaining things, government has started to apply GST. But what game they have played here is on tobacco. They have started to apply GST, and we know that now earlier it was 28 percentage, but now after the recent GST amendments and everything, they have even increased the rate of GST on cigarettes tobacco, which is now 40 percentage. Right, ma'am? So on the sale of tobacco, they have already started applying GST, but ma'am, the very interesting part here is on the manufacturing of tobacco, they have not yet stopped levying excise duties. So they are saying when you are manufacturing tobacco, we are going to charge excise duty, but VAT CST is removed. So when you are going to sell the tobacco products, GST is going to be applicable. So tobacco is not outside the purview of GST like petrol and alcohol. Tobacco is in the purview of GST, but even the excise is not discontinued here. Same applicable for opium, hemp, narcotics, basically the drugs. GST is applicable on these things, but the excise on manufacturing is not yet discontinued. So for these two products, which is tobacco and narcotics, drugs, Indian hemp, opium, we say on the sale of these things, GST has started to apply, But on the manufacturing, they have not yet discontinued the excise also. Now you might have a confusion about, ma'am, at some places there is central excise, at some places there are state excise. How to remember this? नशे वाली चीज है. You understand this much Hindi? Yes. नशे वाली चीज है. Basically, the items that intoxicate you, that keep you high, जिससे आपको नशा हो जाए, these things come under the state government purview. So see, tobacco is not intoxicant. Like, you can smoke and still be in senses. You don't lose your senses like you do in drugs and alcohol, right, ma'am? So tobacco is just a habit. It is not, it is not intoxicating. It is not, it will not make you lose the senses, right, ma'am? So tobacco comes under central excise only. Petroleum products come under central excise only. But the intoxicating thing, consuming which you will lose your senses, जिससे तुम्हें नशा हो जाए, they are alcohol and the drugs, opium, narcotics, Indian hemp. On these things, state excise is applicable. So you can simply remember it using a trick as नशे वाली चीजें. नशे वाली चीजें, the intoxicating items, which is alcohol and drugs, state excise is applicable. But the other things, which is petroleum products and tobacco, central excise is going to be applicable. On tobacco and drugs, GST has already started to apply. But on alcohol and petroleum products, GST is not applicable. Alcohol to permanently not applicable, but the petroleum products not applicable today. So till then, we are going to charge VAT for intrastate sale and CST for interstate sale. All the entertainment taxes have been subsumed in GST, but if there is any entertainment tax levied by local body, the power still remains with the local body to levy the same. And last is real estate sector, which is completed land, building, properties. If you are selling, they are also outside the purview of GST. Stamp duties, property taxes, etc. are applicable. However, before you ask me this doubt that, ma'am, we recently purchased a property, we recently took a home in a scheme which is being developed, and ma'am, we have paid GST. So how are you saying that GST is not applicable? I used a word completed. If you are purchasing a land, GST is not applicable. If you are purchasing a completed property, let's say I already have this house, this office, this studio constructed, I am now selling it, GST will not be applicable. But when you purchase an under construction property, a scheme which is being constructed currently, but you pre-book your property there, you pre-book your office there, your home or whatever you are purchasing there, in that case, GST is applicable. That GST is basically applicable on the construction service because the property is not yet constructed, not yet completed. So if you are purchasing any under construction property, their GST is applicable. But a completed land, building, immovable property, if you are dealing with, GST is not going to be applicable. Property taxes, stamp duties, etc. apply. We are going to discuss more about this, ma'am, that at what exact point do we consider the property to be completed. About this, more detailed discussion we are going to do in the chapter of supply under GST. As of now, you can simply remember this stuff that, ma'am, for real estate sector, which is a completed land, building, property, immovable property, we will say it is outside the scope of GST. Under construction properties, GST is charged. How, what exact time, what rate, everything we are going to discuss later on. Bolo yes, ma'am, done. This is little important. Out of everything that I've taught you in this chapter, one thing that you should know, because ICI will assume that you know these things in further chapters, is taxes not subsumed under GST. Can we do a quick revision? Yes, ma'am, chalo. Now, I will randomly name any one of you who will have to reply me for that particular question. Right, ma'am. So I don't want all of you to reply. I will say that question 1, I want answer from this person, and that person only has to reply to me. Right, ma'am. So tobacco. Okay. Lalita, tell me, what is the taxability of tobacco as of now? Which taxes apply on tobacco as of now? Lalita, tell me. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Which taxes are applicable? Chaitanya, tell me. Chaitanya will reply to me, which taxes are applicable on alcoholic liquor for human consumption? Pradipan. Pradipan will tell me that, ma'am, on narcotics, drugs, opium, Indian hemp, what taxes? are applicable. High speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation turbine, fuel, petroleum, crude. Nandini, tell me, which taxes are going to be applicable here? Entertainment tax. Entertainment tax levied by whom is applicable currently also? Karthik, tell me, who can still levy entertainment tax? Because other entertainment taxes are already subsumed in GST. But entertainment tax levied by which particular body can still be levied? Karthik is going to reply to me. Chalo quickly. It's not that tough also. Come on, guys. Okay, very good. Already got the answer from Chaitanya. That ma'am, because alcohol is intoxicating, nashe wali cheez, state excise is going to apply. Alcohol is permanently outside GST. Therefore, ma'am, if intrastate VAT, if interstate central sales tax. Very good, very good. Everyone has given correct answers only. Ma'am, tobacco. They have started to apply tobacco on narcotics and they've started to apply GST on narcotics and tobacco. But the interesting part is they have not yet discontinued excise also. Tobacco, ma'am, because it is not nashe wali cheese, we will levy central excise here. On narcotics, ma'am, they keep us high, we will levy state excise here. On the petroleum products, we levy central excise. And ma'am, GST is temporarily not applicable. We are waiting for government to notify. Karthik, we don't use the word state government, we use the word local bodies. So the entertainment taxes levied by local body, the entertainment taxes levied by local bodies can still be levied by local bodies. Is it absolutely clear to everyone? Absolutely clear to everyone? Say yes, ma'am. This you should know. Because in further chapters they will assume that you know this. They will not directly ask you in exam that tell the taxability of tobacco, tell the taxability of alcohol, but in some big question one adjustment might come where they will assume that you already know this. Bolo done. Yes, ma'am. Chal. Any one of you having slightest of articleship experience in GST, tell me. Bolo. Sakshi, Aishwarya, Vamsi, tell me. Do we have little experience? Sri, tell me. Do we have little experience in articleship? Okay, or have you ever seen GST website? How many of you? Okay, how many of you have seen GST website, common portal? Yes, some of you have, some of you have not. This is how the GST website www.gst.gov.in our common portal looks. This is the solution for all the problems related to GST. Whether you want to take a new registration, you want to make some payments, you want to track your refunds, you want to go to e-way bill website from here, you have made some application with the government, you want to track the status, you want to search anyone, you can just simply enter anyone's PAN number or GST number and search and get all the data about them, whether they have filed their returns on time or not, which date they got registered, which state they are registered in, how many registrations do that person is holding on a single PAN. So you can simply go by search by PAN, enter the PAN number and you will get all the details about that person, enter the GST number, you will get all the details about that person. You can download offline utilities from here. Using these utilities you can file the returns. Once you log in, after that your returns dashboard etc opens, so you can of course file returns also from here. You can check the balances in your credit ledger, cash ledger, everything from here. Any new GST updates you will find here. GST law entirely, you can go to the help section and here you have all the GST law also, all the state laws, central laws, IGST laws, everything. So basically this one common portal does all the stuff related to GST. It's just one website here that I have to visit. Yes, ma'am. So we are saying that www gst.gov.in, we call it as the common portal, is the portal for all the services with respect to GST. This is managed by a company named GSTN, which is GST Network, and this is a Section 8 company. Oh, what do we mean by the term Section 8 company? I know law is now not the compulsory subject for you, it is now SPOM, but still I believe you have little idea about what is a Section 8 company, ma'am. It is a non-profit entity, right? So government has set up this non-profit entity, Section 8 company, GST Network, which manages the entire website of GST. Everything, right from taking the registration till applying to for cancellation of registration, everything, every work you have to do on this website only, which is gst.gov.in. However, ma'am, only for e-way bill, we have a separate website which is ewaybillgst.gov.in, and for e-invoice, we have a separate website which is e-invoice 1. Now, government has started e-invoice 2 also. So, government has 1 to 10. They have notified 1 to 10 e-invoice, as and when needed, they will open the remaining websites also. So, e-way bill is to specifically make e-way bill compliances, and e-invoice is specifically to make e-invoice related compliances. Now, if you don't have any idea about e-way bill or e-invoice, relax, because we have a specific chapter in the syllabus named as e-way bill, which we are going to study. And you will understand what exactly e-way bill is, why do we generate, and where do we generate. Same to same, we have a chapter named tax invoice in the syllabus, where I will teach you what is e-invoice, why to generate, who to generate, where to generate, everything. For now, we are just understanding about the websites, the portals that are available to do GST related compliances. So, ma'am, all the services, every compliance is done on the common portal, which is gst.gov.in. For e-way bill, we have a separate website. You can like directly go to the e-way bill website from here also. E-way bill system. Okay, so this is ewaybill.gst.gov.in. This is how the ewaybill website looks. Right, ma'am. And see, if you see here, it is managed by the National Informatics Center. I don't know if it is clear or not. And the same thing is written here, that the GST network manages the GST website, right? Similarly here, National Informatics Center, Government of India, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology manages the ewaybill website. The e-invoice website is managed by the GST network only. Right. So this is the e-way bill website. Now, because e-way bill is related to goods moving, goods being in transit, therefore you are seeing this RFID, fast tag, and trucks and everything. So when we are moving our goods from one place to another place, a document which evidences that movement is known as e-way bill. All the e-way bill related compliance are done on this particular portal. Similarly, we have a portal for e-invoice also. So we can straight away go to the e-invoice portal. Now this is the e-invoice portal where you get all your invoices registered. Government gives QR code to all your invoices, recognizes them uniquely, returns these invoices to you. More details when we go to the respective chapters. So we have these 3 websites with which you are going to deal if you practice in GST. The common portal, the e-way bill portal, and the e-invoice portal. Right. Okay. If you have little experience in articleship about GST, you would 100% be using some or the other software. Okay, if not GST, you would have done articleship in income tax, some field you would have done, and your firm, your principal would be using some software to file the returns. Are you aware about that? Tell me which software is used in your firm to file the GST returns. Ma'am, there are some famous softwares like ClearTax, EasyTax, CompuTax, BusyTax, Spectrum, etc. So we have all these softwares, Genius, all these softwares which chartered accountants are using to file the returns of their clients. Yes, are you aware about this? If not GST, if you have worked in income tax, then for income tax also, some or the other software, 100% your firm would be using. Right, ma'am. What are these softwares and why do we use them? Ma'am, we are taxpayers. We have to interact with the GST network, the GST website. Now, ma'am, interacting directly might be little tough. Let us say I have 1 lakh bills in a particular month. Now I want to file the GST return for the same. Going on website, doing it through offline utilities might be little time consuming, tricky. So what we do is, for facilitation, for simplicity, for ease, we use these softwares which make our work faster. So you can use ClearTax, EasyTax, BZTax. So these are enrolled with government. These people are integrated with the GST software, the GST website. You can through them do all the processes very easily. Anyone cannot just like this start a software and then integrate it with GST. No, you have to get yourself registered. There are a lot of compliances for the same. We call these people as GST Suvidha providers. Ma'am, Suvidha in Hindi, facility in English. So facility when translated in Hindi, we call it as Suvidha. So it is basically GST facility providers. So these GSPs help the taxpayers to interact with the GST network, the GST website in a very easy and smooth manner. And how do they make this possible? By developing applications, softwares, which are in turn going to do all the work. So these GSPs are a link between taxpayers and GST network. Now, how will GSPs create that link, ma'am? Using applications and softwares. So we have applications with the providers, which are a link between GSP and the taxpayers. One thing, ma'am, is it compulsory? Can you not directly go to GST portal and file your return? Ma'am, 100% we can. We can directly go to GST portal and do all the compliances. It is not necessary. Just like you can go to the income tax website and file your entire return, you don't need a software compulsorily. But still we use. Why? Because it is easy and simple to do. Same thing applicable here, ma'am. The facility of using GST Suvidha provider is not mandatory, not compulsory, it is optional. If you think it will ease out your task, if you want, you can. You will have to use, no. So this is completely optional. We say GSP is an additional channel being made available for facilitating the taxpayers to perform some functions very smoothly, interact with the GST network very easily. Usage of their services is of course completely optional. It is not mandatory for you to use GSP to file your returns. You can directly also do. GSPs take help of applications who act as a link between the taxpayers and GSPs. Ma'am, what functions we can do? What functions we can do using these GST Suvidha providers? They help you in return filing. They help you in monitoring your compliances. They also make a reconciliation statement for you. So whatever is the purchase data in your books versus whatever is available on the website, the auto-populated data, and also they will reconciliate it, create a summary for you that these are the differences. And let's say a chartered accountant has 500 clients for whom he is filing GST returns. So it becomes very easy for him to track. He can simply go to the software. He has all the clients enrolled in it. He can simply find out the list that, okay, for this month, whose return is pending. So the compliance becomes very, very easy using these softwares. Return filing also becomes very easy. They make the reconciliations which otherwise you will have to make, and it is very time consuming also. This is a simple topic, a simple concept of GST Suvidha provider and application Suvidha provider. Are you all with me? Are you all understanding? Say yes, ma'am. Chalo bolo fast, quickly. Kaho na kaho, jaldi. Got it, ma'am. We are with you. Now, what is this compensation says? So, ma'am, there are two types of products on which government can levy as much tax as they want and nobody will oppose it. What are these two things, ma'am? One is luxury items and second is demerit items, or we call it as sin items. So if government increases rate on tobacco, as they did recently from 28 to 40%, they increased the rate. Did anyone question? No. Assume they would have increased rate of GST on salt, on milk, on sugar. Then ma'am, people would have started doing protest because these are basic necessities. But let's say government increases rate of GST on special edition watches, on very high-end sporting cars, etc. People will not be concerned. Why? Because the people who can afford these luxury are anyways rich. So it doesn't matter to them if 5-10% is increased. For demerits in goods, we are saying anyways, government always can say that we are trying to trying to discourage people to consume these things, and therefore we are increasing the rate of taxes on these things. So for luxury and demerit goods, government can always charge more taxes. So ma'am, when GST was being implemented, the state governments again had a problem saying that, oh, we are getting very high taxes on pan masala, tobacco, motor cars, aerated waters, etc. because these are demerit or luxury items. Now, if GST comes, we will lose on revenue. So the central government said, okay, no problem. To compensate your loss of revenue, because we are bringing GST, we give you this power to levy compensation cess. The name itself suggests the meaning. A cess levied to compensate the loss of revenue is known as compensation cess. So on these kind of luxury, demerit or sin goods, government also has the power to levy compensation cess over and above GST. Initially, in 2017, when GST was implemented, they said we are levying compensation cess only for 5 years. After that, we'll just categorize everything, we'll standardize everything, and we'll stop levying compensation cess. However, they kept on increasing the date. So from 2017, if you calculate 5 years, it has to be 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Compensation cess should actually have been discontinued by 2022, but it did not. They kept on increasing the date and levy compensation cess. However, this is not a permanent levy. Eventually compensation cess will be removed only because that is what they said initially when they implemented the compensation cess. It is just to provide for compensation of loss arising initially, because then eventually later on they are increasing the GST rates only from 28 to 40 on all these items. So of course compensation cess will then be lifted only. Right. Done. This is not that important also. Officially, we are left with just the one last part of the chapter, which is constitutional provisions. As I said, we can break the chapter in parts. So the first part was just about history. Why GST, when GST, what was before GST, what subsumed, what not subsumed. The other part was about compliance, that how you categorize goods services under GST using HSN code and all. What is the which is the website through which all the work related to GST is done, how to communicate with the website using GST Suvidha Provider, applications Suvidha Provider, etc. So that was more about knowing GST practically today. And now, ma'am, we come to the last part of the chapter, which is constitutional provisions. As I mentioned yesterday in the history discussion part, that ma'am, to bring GST, we had to amend the Constitution of India. And I told you that in tomorrow's lecture, I will explain you why we had to amend the Constitution. Right? Yes, ma'am. So we will do this discussion of constitutional provisions after break. Take a 5-7 minutes break. See, normally every day we will be having a 2.5 to 3 hour session. So mostly it is around like 2 hours 30 minutes, 2 hours 40 minutes, 2 hours 45 minutes is the general duration of our class. So between this, I will give you a 10 minutes break. Sometimes if we are extending the class, if you need, I will give you a 15 minutes break also on a daily basis. However, because the first 3-4 lectures we generally keep small only for you to get comfortable, and then we move on to the full-fledged 2.5 hours, 2 hours 45 minutes session. So I don't think you need 10-15 minutes break today at least. It is just 1 hour 13 minutes that we've studied, and more half an hour or 45 minutes or so, and we will finish the entire topic. So that's why I'm giving you only 5-7 minutes break just to get fresh, drink some water, have milk, tea, coffee, whatever you want, and then we will be back in 7-8 minutes to finish the remaining part of the chapter. So it is 9:05 right now. Around 9:10, 9:12, I will resume the class, right? And then we'll finish the remaining constitutional provisions part of the chapter. Chalo guys, are we back after the break? Let's resume the class. Say yes, ma'am. Are we back, guys? Shall we resume? Yes, ma'am. So, the last part of the chapter, which is constitutional provisions. Now, ma'am, you don't have to learn any of these things. Of course, it's not applicable for exam. It is just only for knowledge purpose that you should know all this. Right, ma'am? It is there in the module, but they have also written that it is for knowledge purpose. So, we are only taking knowledge. Constitution of India has a preamble, we all know, yes ma'am, 25 parts containing 448 articles and 12 schedules. We are specifically concerned about Article 246 with 7th schedule attached to it. Now ma'am, in this 7th schedule, Article 246, we have 3 lists given, which is a union list, state list and concurrent list. Can Pradeepan decide to levy taxes from today? Tell me. Can Pradeepan start levying taxes from his neighborhood, from people that, hey, from tomorrow onwards, whatever you're earning, you have to pay 10% to me? That is not tax, ma'am, that is vasuli. And of course, he cannot do that. Why, ma'am? Because government has not given him authority to do so. The government is levying taxes currently. Why? Because they have been given authority by the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India says that yes, government is eligible to collect taxes. They have the power to levy taxes from people and therefore government is levying taxes. Right, ma'am. But which tax? To be levied by which government? As in the income tax, custom duty that we pay goes to the central government. But ma'am, the taxes on agriculture, alcohol, opium, narcotics goes to the state government. For some criminal laws and stamp duties, there's a concurrent list, money goes to both. So who gets to decide that which government will have the power and jurisdiction to make laws and levy these kind of taxes? It is mentioned in the Constitution of India, Article 246, 7th schedule, that income tax, custom duty, excise duty, central sales tax falls in the purview of union list. So whatever taxes are levied in these categories goes completely to union list. Government, central government only decides what rate of tax they want to charge, how, where, when they want to charge. Everything is under central government power. But agriculture, alcohol, narcotics, VAT, entertainment, betting, gambling, luxury taxes come under the purview of state list. And then we have concurrent list for criminal law and stamp duties. Do you see GST here? Tell me. This is the 7th schedule to Article 246, which was there before 2017. Also, it is there in the same state. Now, in 2017, when government thought of bringing GST. Of course, they were to first decide that whether it will go in union list, state list, or concurrent list. Now, they were very clear since beginning that they want GST to be a dual model, which means they wanted center as well as state to levy GST together. Now, in this 7th schedule to Article 246, do you see GST? Say yes or no. We are standing in 2017 where government is wanting to bring GST. Let's say we are in 2010, 11, 12, 13. The process of bringing GST is going on. And now we are seeing where GST is in the 7th schedule. Can you spot GST? Can you find GST? Say yes or no. Directly, no. Indirectly, yes, ma'am, because there is a residuary point. The union list part says that if any other tax government is to levy, if any other new tax government is to levy, which is not mentioned in any of the list, it will automatically fall under the union list. Now, ma'am, if without amending this, government would have straight away implemented GST because of this residuary point given in the union list, we understand that, ma'am, GST would automatically fall here being a new tax, because government has already said any new tax if you're wanting to levy, it will fall in the union list only if it is not in the state or concurrent list. So without amending this Constitution of India, if directly GST would have been implemented, it would have fallen under the purview of union list, the central government would then have all the powers. We always wanted GST to be a dual model. We always wanted to give simultaneous, concurrent power to center as well as state for GST purposes. And this is the reason we had to amend the Constitution of India. Yesterday, I told you know that before bringing GST, first there was a necessity to amend the Constitution. Now, ma'am, why that I'm teaching you today? First, ma'am, to integrate all the taxes. Earlier there were so many taxes, so first need they wanted to integrate all the taxes into GST. And ma'am, for GST they wanted to give simultaneous power to center as well as state to levy and collect GST. Therefore they had to amend the constitution, and they introduced a new article, article 246A, which says that GST has the simultaneous power, parliament as well as state legislature, which is center as well as state, has the concurrent simultaneous power to make laws with respect to GST, to collect GST in the manner that they want. Ma'am, they could have simply introduced it in the concurrent list only, no? Why a separate article 246A? Because it is not that for all kind of transactions, flat power is with center and state both. No, ma'am. For intrastate transactions, center as well as state have concurrent power. But ma'am, when there is an interstate transaction happening, interstate supplies, then they have given exclusive powers to parliament only. Because if you let two states fight, ma'am, let's say I'm supplying from Gujarat to Maharashtra, both states involved, both states would of course want their state to become the place of supply so that they can get the revenue of GST. So ma'am, for interstate supplies, if you leave the decision, the power on states, there are going to be conflicts happening, because every state will want itself to get the GST revenue. Therefore government said that, see, we want to make it a mixed kind of a structure, so they introduced a new article, article 246A. They did not touch article 246, they brought a new article 246A, where they said that, see, normally we want to give parliament as well as state legislature concurrent power, simultaneous power to make laws for GST, collect GST. But whenever interstate supply will happen, no, for once parliament will have the full power, they will collect IGST, and then later on this IGST is apportioned between center and state as per the laws made by parliament. We do have in constitution article 269A also. I'm not teaching you right now because that's not relevant for you. However, in Constitution of India we also have article 269A, which says that for all the interstate supplies, once the parliament, the central government, has the power to collect IGST, and then later on this IGST is apportioned between center and state depending upon which is the place of supply, which is the state of destination or consumption. So it is a mixed kind of structure where normally center and state are having together power. But as and when interstate supply comes, the full power goes to parliament once. Then they will collect the money and then allocate it to the respective state. Are we understanding this, everyone? Say yes. So if anyone asks you that to bring GST, why did we amend the constitution? What was even the need to amend constitution? Because constitution has already given power to government to levy whatever kind of taxes they want. So they had the power to already levy GST. Why amendment? Because if they would not have made amendment because of this article 246, entire GST power would go to union as per this residuary point. But we wanted center and state both to have the powers. For intra, for inter, we wanted only parliament to have the powers, and therefore we had to bring a new article to introduce this particular amendment. Is it clear to everyone? Say yes, ma'am, so that I can proceed with next article of constitution, which is 279A. Bolo yes. Done, 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 everyone. Yes, ma'am. Perfect. Now, ma'am, entire syllabus, every chapter, you're going to hear this. Recommended by council, notified by government. Recommended by council, notified by government. Ma'am, what do we mean by this? For any new amendment, any new law to come in force, the government has to notify it in the official gazette, right? Now, whatever government is notifying with respect to GST, all these recommendations come from GST Council. It is the GST Council actually which meets every month, discusses matters, and then decide what changes we should implement in GST. These things are then recommended to the government, and then government is introducing it via amendment in the law by notifying it in the official gazette. So, who are these people who are actually deciding the fate of GST? Who are these people who are the members of GST Council? How the council is constituted? How the decisions are taken? So, ma'am, first of all, the President of India constitutes the council. Is President herself the member of council? No, ma'am. President of India is not the member of council. She is just constituting the council. After constitution, there are 33 members in the GST council. Okay. Who are these 33 members? Let us understand. Okay, simple question. Tell me how many states are there in GST? A recap of what I taught you just now 1 hour back. How many states are there in GST? Not geographically, as per GST law, how many states are there? Quickly tell me. Very good. Ma'am, as per GST, we have 31 states. So very simple, ma'am. Every state will send one minister. Minister who is in charge of taxation or finance, who understands laws and taxes. So one minister will come from every state. So one minister, one state, 31 members. So we have right here only. Right, ma'am. So we are saying from 31 states, we will have one member. So minister in charge of finance or taxation or any minister which is nominated by each state will come and become member of this council. Now these people amongst themselves only select who is going to be the vice president of the council, because the chairperson is fixed, ma'am. 31 members are from state, 2 members are from union. Out of 2, one is compulsorily fixed, who is the finance minister of India. Tell me, who is the finance minister of India currently? Member of GST council, also the chairperson. So, ma'am, the chairperson is not selected or elected as such. Whoever becomes the finance minister of India compulsorily becomes the member of GST council, compulsorily becomes the chairperson of GST council as a central member. So, of 31 states, we have 31 members. From union, from center, we have 2. Of 2, one is compulsorily member by position. So, as you become finance minister of India, you compulsorily become the chairperson of GST council. So, you tell me, who is currently the chairperson of GST council in India? Bolo na. Hey, she is very popular. Of course, we all know her. Yes, ma'am. Nirmala Sitharaman ji, being the Finance Minister of India, is also the chairperson of GST Council, also the member of Union side in the GST Council. Plus, we have one more minister in charge of taxation and all, who will take care of all the union territories. So from 31 members, we of 31 states, we have one minister each. So 31 members out of 31 states, plus finance minister compulsorily, and one other minister who will be representing all the union territory state at the central level. So union minister of state in charge of revenue finance, we have chairperson who is compulsorily the finance minister, and plus 31 members coming from 31 states. So chairperson is fixed, finance minister, and the vice president will be elected basically from these 31 members amongst themselves. They will only decide who is going to become the vice president. President of India is not a member to council, but President of India constitutes the council. Uh-oh, Siri got activated. So President of India is not the member to council, but President of India constitutes the council. Right. What is the meaning of quorum? Tell me. Law free with GST. Have you heard this term quorum? Of course you have. In your foundations, inter-level, SPOM law, you are aware about the term quorum. What do we mean by this? Tell me. Chalo. Ma'am, quorum means the minimum requirement of members to be present for a meeting to be validly conducted. Right, ma'am. So if at all there is a council meeting and they are deciding on some matters, there are a total of 33 members, out of which at least half. Now, I cannot say 16.5 members, so I'll round it off to 17. So we are saying at least 17 members are required to be present. Then we will say that there is a quorum, and then they can take the meeting forward and make decisions at the meeting. If less than 17 members are present, quorum is not there, no decisions can be taken in that particular meeting. How is a decision taken, ma'am? We have to see 3/4 majority. But this is a very interesting concept here. Even though it's not relevant for exam as such, we are in Safal batch. I'll teach you everything for practical knowledge also. So we are saying, ma'am, this is interesting. For council to decide on any matter, there has to be a 3/4 majority. So let us say, ma'am, out of 33, 30 members are present and voting today. So if I directly do 3/4 of 30, so I will say 30 multiplied by 3 divided by 4, which comes as 22.5. So at least 23 people have to agree on something so that we can take the decision. This is not how it works. 3/4 meaning 75%? Yes, ma'am. This is not a simple majority. This is not a simple majority. This has to be weighted majority. Meaning, ma'am, let us say out of 30, 2 members of union are present and 28 members of state are present and they are voting for a matter. If I directly see 3/4 of 30, it comes as 22.5. I can round it off to 23. So if 23 people are saying yes, I believe I can take a decision. Let us check out. Ma'am, I'm saying that for a matter which is under discussion right now, these 2 union members said yes. Out of the 28 members of state, 19 people said yes. And if I do 28 minus 19, I will say 9 people said no. So if I check simple majority, I will say 19 members of state plus 2 members of union, 21 members said yes. If I divide 21 upon 30, it is going to be less than 3/4 majority. So I believe decision will not be taken. But this is not how it works. There is no simple majority to check 75%. You have to take weighted majority. Meaning, ma'am, these union people have 1/3 power and the state people have 2/3 power in total given weights. 1/3 meaning 33.33 percentage and 2/3 meaning 66.666 percentage. Right, ma'am. So I am saying these 2 people of union who are present and voting combined have a 33.33% power. So tell me what will be the power per person. Every person has 16.666 percentage power per person here for union. If I talk about state, ma'am, the 28 members who are present currently have a combined power of 66.66. So 66.666 divided by 28, if I do, I can say that there is a 2.38095 percentage power per person. Right. Now I will calculate the weighted majority. So I will say 2 members of union saying yes. Per member, the power is 16.66 percentage. Plus 19 members of state saying yes. Per member, the power is 2.38095 percentage. So I will just simply multiply this by 19 and plus. This comes to 78.57 percentage majority. When I calculated the simple majority saying that 19 plus 2, 21 people are saying yes, it was less than 75%, less than 3/4. So I decided that this decision cannot be taken. However, that is not how you calculate. Calculation is done like this. 33.33, 1/3 power is with the center and 2/3 power is with the state. Always. Always 1/3 power with the center and 2/3 power with the state. Now, you divide this with how many members are actually present and voting. So you get the power per member. And then you multiply it with the member saying yes. And this final answer has to be greater than 75% or at least equal to 75% because I have to take at least 3/4 majority. If it is, I will say yes, this decision can be accepted. Are you understanding? I'm waiting for 1 or 2 minutes. If you want to note this down, please do it. I will share the board note also in your drive, but still, if you want to note this down right now, you can. Or let's do one thing. I'll ask you one more question that you write with me only. I will share the board note for this example for you to copy. Right now, I'm giving, let's take one more example. You write that with me only. So, ma'am, total members in the council 33. But today, the members present and voting are 25. Tell me, first of all, is the quorum there? Yes, ma'am. Quorum is there. What is the spelling of quorum? I'm sorry. Oh, it was QU. Yes, ma'am. Quorum is there because more than 17 are present. So I will say yes, quorum is there. Okay. More than equal to 17, I have to see. Now, ma'am, out of this 25, let us say 2 members of union are present and 23 members of state are present. We are discussing on a matter for which these 2 members of union said yes. Nobody said no. Both of them said yes. And out of 23, I am saying 17 members of state said yes. And if I do 23 minus 17, 6 people said no. You have to tell me whether this decision will be accepted or rejected. What is the exact majority which is prevalent here as per the weighted method? So these people have a combined weightage of 1/3 and these people have a combined weightage of 2/3. Now you tell me what is the majority here. Is it more than equal to 75? Can I accept this or no? Chalo quickly. Ma'am, first of all, I will calculate the power per member because the union power, union people combined have a weightage of 33.33. I will say per member 16.666 percentage power these people have per member here. But here, ma'am, there are a total of 23 members. So 66.666 divided by 23, if I do, I will say 2.89855 is the power per member. You have to simply divide 66.666 by the members present and voting. So now, ma'am, I will do 2 people saying yes and per person having a power of 16.66 percentage. Plus, ma'am, here 17 people saying yes and per person having power of this. So multiply this by 17. It gives me, ma'am, 82.608 approximately, something like this, which is of course greater than 75 percentage. So yes, this decision is going to be accepted. This is an 82.60 percentage majority. Say yes, ma'am. Understood. Are we understanding, everyone? Yes. This final answer has to be more than equal to 3/4 majority. Then you can accept a decision. But it is not a simple majority. It is a weighted majority. Meaning, ma'am, you have to give 1/3 weight to union and 2/3 weight to state. Let us solve one more question. Let us say, ma'am, all 33 members are present and voting. For a matter, 2 union people said no. And all the 31 state people, all the 31 state people said yes. Let's say both of the union people said no. All the 31 members of state present and voting said yes. So, ma'am, if I directly see the simple majority, 31 divided by 33, it is 94% majority. Still, this decision will be taken. Ma'am, see, I will say here, they have a 33.333 percentage power. They have 66.666 percentage power in total. Because both of them said no. For union side, it will be 0 only. And for state side, ma'am, what will be the power per member, ma'am? 66.666 divided by 31 will be the power per member. All the 31 people said yes, which means, ma'am, even if they all say yes, no, still it is going to be 66.67 percentage only, which is less than 75%. This decision cannot be taken. So do you understand? Even if all the state members come together, they cannot take a decision because they combined have a majority of 66% only, and at least 75 is needed. So they need to have at least one union member with them. Only then they can take the decision. So we understand here that because the center has 1/3 weight and the state has 2/3 weight, no decision can be taken unless the central government assents, because, ma'am, all the state governments coming together also have a weight of 66.66 percentage only. So majority has to be not less than 3/4, but this has to be seen as a weighted majority of 1/3 state and 1/3 center and 2/3 state. Are you understanding? Isn't this very interesting? Yes, ma'am. And then we say, what exactly do they discuss in these meetings, ma'am? They normally discuss that which taxes, cess, surcharges to be subsumed, which goods or services should be subjected to GST, which should be exempted from GST, what should be the threshold limit, till then will not tell the person to get registered. Now, ma'am, for interstate supplies, IGST is collected. Now, how to apportion this IGST, levy this IGST, distribute it among the states, ma'am? What should be the rate of GST? Special provisions for the 11, no Assam and Uttarakhand and Jammu Kashmir, special category states. Then, ma'am, if there are any calamities, disasters, etc., any special rates to be levied on the goods or services. Any other matter that council may decide. We are also waiting for the council to recommend us the date from which they will start levying GST on alcoholic, on the high speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation turbine fuel, petroleum crude. This also they are to decide. So basically all the decisions in relation to GST, whether to levy tax, to not levy tax, if levy, at what rate to levy, everything is decided by the GST council only. They meet, do the meeting, discuss everything, and then recommend it to government that this is all that we have discussed, we have agreed to it. Government simply just notifies it in the official gazette, and that becomes applicable as law for us. Right, ma'am? Yes. And with this, we complete the entire chapter of GST in India and introduction. When was GST implemented? 2017. Why? Because, ma'am, earlier taxes had a lot of problems. Then how did we solve the problems in GST? Making GST a value added tax, giving credits to people so that the burden finally goes on to consumer. There is never tax on tax. Which taxes are subsumed? All. Which taxes are not subsumed? We saw alcohol, petroleum products, tobacco, narcotics, drugs, immovable properties, entertainment taxes by local bodies. What about the website, the portal of GST? We saw e-way bill, e-invoice website, the common portal. You can interact with common portal through the GST Suvidha providers. How to categorize what rate of GST will be applicable using HSN code, SAC code, all these things, plus the constitutional provisions we have finished in this particular chapter. Are you all feeling comfortable and confident? Did you understand? Enjoy. Learning was not there because, as I said, it is only for knowledge purpose chapter, not asked in examination. So I will not ask whether you have learned with me or not. I am simply asking, did you enjoy the chapter and did you understand the core foundation of GST? So from tomorrow now, we will actually dive into the core GST. What is goods, what is service. We will start with CGST Act, IGST Act, and we will actually discuss the GST law. Till now, we have not started any section, any law. It was just an introduction to the subject. Is it understood to everyone? Are you all enjoying? Say yes or yes. Is there an option of no? No. Bolo haan ki haan. Yes or yes, guys, tell me. Done, understood. Perfect. Then I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. And now we are going to start the core GST from tomorrow, which is the important terms. Till then, take care and bye bye, everyone.